Spooky America, 4 real ghost stories. Is America haunted? Across the country, in tiny towns and in big cities, you hear ghost stories. Thousands of them. Ask around. Chances are there's a strange and spooky tale about your hometown. But are these stories true? Many of them, like the ones in this book, started with real people, places, or events. Somewhere along the way, legend got mixed up with history. Today, it's hard to tell what really happened. What we do know is that at one time or another, people believed the 4 stories you're about to read. The question is, do you? The Mooncasser's Horse. The old pirate peers into the sky. Perfect, he whispers. He cackles to himself. Not a star is shining. A thin sliver of moon is hidden behind dark clouds. It's a pitch-black night. A perfect night for shipwreck. Over 300 years ago, ships sank along Cape Cod almost every week. Sailors called it the graveyard of the Atlantic. There were many reasons for the shipwrecks: thick fog, strong currents, fierce storms. There was another, more terrible reason, too: Mooncassers. Mooncassers were pirates, but not the usual kind. They didn't sail the ocean, looking for ships to attack. Instead, Mooncassers worked on land. They paced the shore in the dead of night. Over their heads, they swung lanterns. Off in the distance, a ship would see the lanterns bobbing. The captain would mistake them for the lights of another ship safely passing Cape Cod. He would follow the lights and crash onto the shore. As soon as the ship wrecked, the Mooncassers sprang into action. They murdered the crew and stole the cargo. The pirates' trick worked only on the darkest of nights, when the moonlights wouldn't give them away. That's how they got their name. On bright nights, they cussed the moon. One pirate, the Monomoy Mooncasser, was especially greedy. He didn't want to share his loot, so he worked along on an empty spit of land called Monomoy Point. His only partner was a beautiful horse. He chose her for her color. Except for a small white patch on her forehead, she was all black. In the dark, she was almost invisible. One moonless night, the pirate went to work. He tied a lantern to his horse's mane and another to her tail. He lit the wicks inside. Yanking on the horse's reins, he trotted her along the shore. Above, thick storm clouds rolled in. Rain began to fall, first lightly and then in great sheets. The wind shrieked. The pirate grinned. The more awful the weather, the more likely a ship would wreck. The waves beat higher and higher against the sand. The horse whinnied nervously, but the pirate ignored her. He ignored the waves too, even when they socked his ankles, then his knees, then his hips. Suddenly, a huge wall of water rose up. It crashed over the shore and swept the pirate and his horse out to sea. The Mooncasser screamed for his horse to take him on her back, but the horse broke free. She swam away hard and fast through the churning water. First, the lantern on her mane sputtered and went out. Then the one on her tail went blank too. That's when the pirate knew he was doomed. It would be impossible to spot his horse in the darkness. After all, that is why he chose her. At dawn, the moon causer's body washed up on the shore. His horse was nowhere to be found. A month passed. The moon grew full, then shrank to a sliver again. Sailors began to report a strange sight. A horse was swimming around Monomoy Point in the middle of the night. Except for a black patch on her forehead, she was all white. A gleaming, ghostly white. It was the moon causer's horse. Now that she was free from the pirate, she no longer wrecked ships. She rescued them instead. For the next 100 years, sailors followed the bright white horse to safety. Today, ships have little trouble sailing around Cape Cod. There is rarely a shipwreck anymore. But some sailors swear that on the darkest of nights, you can still see the moon causer's horse. They say she was never stopped trying to make up for the moon causing at Monomoy Point. And she never will. Picky and Pratt. A visitor stares at a painting on the first floor of the Shirley Plantation Museum. The painting hangs a bit crooked. Otherwise, it looks perfectly ordinary. The woman in the picture is Martha Hill Pratt. Her brother-in-law built this grand house nearly 3 centuries ago. Members of her family still own it today. They call Martha Ann Pratt, and they know her painting is not ordinary at all. Ann Pratt was born at Shirley. She lived there until she married and moved to England in the early 1700s. After she left, her picture was hung in the bedroom on the first floor. It was a nice, sunny spot. Across the room was a big window. Outside lay the green grass of the family cemetery. The painting stayed in the same place for the next 100 years or so. Generations of the family came and went. Finally, in the 1800s, the family decided to change things around. They took down Ann Pratt's picture and put it in the attic. That's when the trouble started. Around midnight, the family heard a sound. It was coming from upstairs. Tap, tap, tap. The family checked the attic. Everything seemed fine, but the spooky noise didn't stop. Night after night, it continued. Tap, tap, tap. The family was baffled. The only thing different was Ann Pratt's painting. Could the picture have something to do with the tapping? It seemed impossible. They moved the picture to the 3rd floor. The noise moved too. Tap, tap, tap. They tried the 2nd floor. Tap, tap, tap. Finally, they hung the painting on the 1st floor again. That night, the house was silent. Ann Pratt was trying to tell them something. She wanted her old spot back. Maybe it was because she could see out the window. She could watch over her loved ones in the cemetery outside. The family gave in to Ann Pratt's wishes. They left the painting on the 1st floor. There it stayed for at least another 100 years. Then, in 1974, Ann Pratt's picture was moved again, this time all the way to New York City. There was a display of haunted objects at Rockefeller Center. Ann Pratt's picture was going to be part of it. No one knew it would be the main attraction. The minute the painting was hung, it began to act up. It rattled against the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Then it started to swing on its hook. Back and forth, higher and higher. Ann Pratt's picture would not stay still. Crowds gathered to see the restless painting. NBC News even ran a report about it. The people at Rockefeller Center locked the painting in the closet overnight for safekeeping. Anne Pratt didn't like that at all. The night watchman heard loud banging coming from the closet. He was pretty sure he heard a woman crying too. The closet door was opened. There lay the picture, face down on the floor. Its frame was smashed. Anne Pratt's family decided she had had enough. Once the frame was fixed, they took the picture home. They hung it in its favorite place for good. These days, Anne Pratt seems happy. There's just one thing. In 2001, the first floor needed repairs. Jordana Massard works at Shirley. She took the picture down until the repairs were done. Now, whenever Jordana goes into the museum, the painting hangs crooked. It's just a friendly reminder from Anne Pratt. Leave me alone. The Bony Bachelor. J. Dawson Hedgepath is dead. Annie Lewis is sure of it. She saw him buried last year with her own 2 eyes. Yet here he is, standing on her front porch. He's got his same old brown hat on his head. That is, on the skull that used to be his head. I think I'm going to faint, Annie whispers. The skeleton pulls off his hat. He drops to one bony knee. Annie, J. Dawson says softly, will you marry me? Flop, down goes Annie. In the 1860s, most men went to Colorado looking for one thing, gold. J. Dawson Hedgepath went looking for 2 things, gold and a bride. The lonely miner arrived in 1863. That year, he asked nearly every woman in town to be his wife. The problem was, most of them were already married. That didn't stop J. Dawson. Time after time, he knelt with his dusty brown hat in his hand. Will you marry me? The women's husbands weren't pleased. Some of them threatened J. Dawson with fists. Some threatened him with shotguns. You might think that's how J. Dawson met his end, but no. One hot July day in 1865, J. Dawson couldn't find any ladies to visit, so he decided to go for a hike on nearby Mount Bros. Halfway up the trail, he took a wrong step and plunged to his death off the side of the mountain. The people of Buckskin Joe buried J. Dawson in the cemetery just outside of town. They thought his courting days were over. They were dead wrong. It wasn't long before J. Dawson started showing up again. His skeleton knocked on every door in town. First, he called on the town seamstress, then the school teacher, then the barmaid from the saloon. Each time, the people of Buckskin Joe buried J. Dawson's bones again. Each time, he came back. The townspeople dug his grave deeper. They put heavy rocks on it, but nothing kept J. Dawson from looking for love. He proposed to the barber's daughter, the banker's sister, even the mayor's wife. Finally, the people of Buckskin Joe couldn't take it anymore. They stuffed J. Dawson's bones into a sack. In the middle of the night, they rode over the mountains to the town of Leadville. There, they stopped at an outhouse. They carried J. Dawson's bones inside and dumped them down the hall. That should do it, they figured. Even if he got out, he'd be too embarrassed by his smell to go courting. The plan worked. From then on, the women of Buckskin Joe were left alone. Of course, the Leadville ladies had their own troubles. Each time they visited the outhouse, they heard a soft voice from below. "Will you marry me?" By hook or by crook. Old Captain Eastcoot is stubborn. He doesn't care how hot the summer gets. He doesn't want any kids on his beach. It's not hard to keep them away. After all, the captain looks scary. His face is rough from years at sea, and he always wears a scowl on it. His left hand is shriveled up like a claw. Every morning he straps a shiny gold hook to his wrist. When anyone comes near, he just shakes the hook and hollers. "Stay off my land!" Sure enough, the kids steer clear. They're all terrified of Captain Eastcoot, and he's not even a ghost yet. Alfred Derby Eastcoot wasn't always scary, but he was always stubborn. As a boy, he wanted to become a sailor. He ran off to sea when he was just 9 years old. Later, his hand was burned in a fire on the ship, but that didn't stop him. He learned to sail one-handed. He even became the captain of his own ship. Years passed. Alfred's ship went down near Stinson Beach. The stubborn captain decided to stay right there. He built a fine house on the beach and married a lady named Amelia Dumas. Together, they opened the campground. Alfred told stories and Amelia sang songs for the campers. Everyone liked the sea captain and his pretty wife. Then, one terrible evening, Amelia fell into Alfred's arms, dead. Doctors said her heart had burst. After that, Alfred's own heart was never the same. He turned angry and bitter. He stopped welcoming people to his beach. Instead, he spent the rest of his life scaring them away. Captain Eastcoot died at 2 o'clock in the morning on December 10th, 1905. The next day, the hearse came for his body. 4 men struggled to carry his coffin across the loose sand. One of the men slipped. The coffin fell. Captain Eastcoot's gold hook tumbled out. Before anyone could pick it up, the waves swept the hook out to sea. 25 years passed. Captain Eastcoot's house sat empty. Vines grew over the windows. The porch sagged. The kids who had been afraid of the captain grew up. They hardly thought of him anymore. All that changed one misty night in 1930. A light flickered in an upstairs window at the old Eastcoot house. Someone was in there, moving from room to room, searching for something. The front door creaked open. A figure stumbled down the steps. It looked like a man. He fell to his knees on the beach. With one hand, he pawed the sand. "Where's my hook?" he hollered. "Give me my hook!" The news spread through Stinson Beach. Captain Eastcoot was back. People claim the captain's ghost haunts the beach to this day. He appears at 2 o'clock in the morning, the hour of his death, and he spends each night searching for his gold hook. Will he ever give up? It doesn't seem likely. After all, Captain Eastcoot was always stubborn, and he probably always will be.